Hey there, this lesson we are going to set up and hook to some of the JavaScript that we have on the page. So let's create an element. We're going to call that an object called output, and this is going to be attached to the element with the class of output. So that way we don't have to keep typing that document query selector. We can just have that within a usable object format. As well, we need a way to trigger the search. So we're going to hook up that search button to add an event listener to there, as well as to the input. We need to get the value from that input field. So let's set all of those up, and we've got our search term. So this is going to be coming from the input field. So selecting documents, query selector, and we only have one of the input fields. So I'm just going to grab the input by the input tag, and that will select that correct element under search term. And another one that we want to select is the button. And this is where we're adding the event listener. So document and selecting the element with the class or the tag of button. And usually I like to make sure that I do have the right element. So I'll type in the variables within the console just to make sure that I do have the right element there. And as well, we're going to do search term just to make sure that we do have the input. And now that we have that, we can also take that search term and we can update its attributes. So doing set attribute, we're going to set its value, and then within the value, so for now we just put in test, and that should be search term. So that populates the search term with the value for us to use. So we always have something by default, and I'll update this as well going forward. The other thing that we need to do is set up the button and add event listener to the button. So add event listener, and the event that we're listening for is a click. And whenever the button gets clicked, then we're going to initiate the search. And then here is when we do trigger the search, the first thing that we want to do is we want to get the value that's contained within the search term. So let's get that into a variable, search, and taking the search term field element, we're going to pull back the value. So we can use that within the search term. And that means that we can update the URL that we're constructing as well with the new search term. The other thing too that we want to make sure that we do have, so whenever this button gets whenever this button gets clicked, we're going to get the search term from the input field, update our URL that we're making our fetch for, and then return back the appropriate results for that. So for now, I'm going to comment out the search and just make sure that this part is working. Another thing too is that I do want to update this search term. So I'll take search and I'm going to equal it to search, but we're going to wrap it within an encode because so we don't want to have the same spaces. So it's going to allow us to encode that and replacing certain instances of characters. I'll show you what that just did. Our search term, whenever we press search, you can see that the search term, it's there. And if we, for instance, have a space, you can see that because it's been encoded, we get that percentage sign 20 instead of the space. So that's going to allow us to make the request, and this is going to be a better way to make the request within the URI instead of having the space there, as that can sometimes throw off APIs. So also use the encode URI component to make sure that you're removing characters that could potentially cause errors or issues. So now we're going to be ready to move on to the next part where we're going to actually do something with the data that comes back. So that's coming up in the next lesson.